Hello and welcome back to Read Becca. We're yet again at another weekly catch-up on everything that I read and am currently reading, and as always I have a pile of books here. I really leaned into reading some shorter stuff, so yeah, I've got lots of stuff to catch up on. So the first was an advanced reader copy of Book Boyfriend by Kris Ripper, and this is not as bookish as it sounds, I would say. So it's a romance, a male contemporary romance, and it is following Preston, who's a young man who's an editorial assistant at a publishing house, and his best friend, Art, is just going through a bad breakup and shows up at his door wanting to stay there because he's the only one that they know with a spare room. So immediately he is angsting about this crush that he's had on his best friend ever since they kissed once in college. So they're both pretty young. They're like mid-20s, so they've been out of college for a little bit, but are still in that kind of finding their way, just starting their careers. And because of all of this angst over everything to do with this crush and now being forced into this close space with the person they're crushing on, Preston decides to get out his feelings instead of talking to Art by writing kind of a fan fiction of a relationship he dreams they could have. And because he works at a publishing house, he winds up giving kind of his first draft to one of his coworkers, and they, not really thinking that it was actually written by him, end up passing it along to an editor, and the book gets picked up. So he makes all these efforts to assure that the book is published under a pseudonym, and he never mentions it to his best friend who he's living with. And of course, when the book is coming out, his best friend works at a bookshop. So the book is going to be right in their face, and there's going to be no denying the feelings anymore. So what is he going to do when it's out in the open? So that's kind of the general premise of this. I would say the plot is very thin. It's not a bad book. I didn't dislike the book, but it definitely was not for me, I think. It is extremely angsty. So 90% of this book is inside of Preston's head, him overthinking every little thing. And so most of what happens plot-wise is really just to give us a different setting where he can think and angst spiral over what's going on. So it was a little bit miserable to be in his head. I would say if you have any sort of like secondhand embarrassment, this is going to be a tough one for you. But I do think that this will be very relatable for people who are, in their, 18 to 25 range and feeling that not quite established, still figuring themselves out, lack of self-confidence for sure. I think that'll be very relatable in terms of the characterization. And then if you like really angsty romance, this is that for sure. So I think that's definitely a well-written book, but not one that's for me. Then on Easter, I decided to do my Picture This read of Marlon Bundo, or A Day in the Life of Marlon Bundo, by Marlon Bundo with Jill Twiss. And illustrated by E.G. Keller. So this was just delightful. If you don't know the backstory of this book, this was done by John Oliver, his TV show after Mike Pence said some, not so nice things about gay marriage. And so this is a delightful little book from Marlon Bundo, who is actually, like, I guess the real name of the bunny that Mike Pence's family have. And they made that perspective of him then meeting another bunny who he hops around and realizes they want to hop around together forever. And they happen to both be boy bunnies. And so they go tell their friends, and their friends are very excited for them and says that's what friends do. And then the stink bug comes in, and the stink bug is extremely angry and wants to stop them and says boy bunnies cannot marry other boy bunnies. But then through the power of friendship, all of the friends agree that even though someone's in power right now, that doesn't mean they always have to be in power, and you can have a say. And so they take a vote and they kick the stink bug out of power. So I just love this for like the friends prompt. You can see all the friends. I love this little dog over here. And of course our adorable couple. And the stink bug is very angry. So it was just a delightful little story about acceptance and embracing our differences, and then the power of change through voting, really. So I think the importance of voting is great to get in at that young level, because I don't see that very often in children's books. So very good. Then I read Superman Red Sun by Mark Millar, and art by Dave Johnson, Killian Plunkett, Andrew Robinson, and Walden Wang. So this was a reread for me. I really enjoy this particular story. It's the only Superman that I actually own, if that tells you anything, because I'm normally a Batman fan. And it's got a very classic art style. So this one is a one-shot story that's completely self-contained. It kind of looks at the idea of what would happen if Superman crash landed. So that's kind of his backstory. He crash landed as a baby in a little spaceship. What if he crash landed 12 hours later and was on the other side of the world? So he crash landed in the Soviet Union and was raised in a collective farm in Ukraine. So interesting timing. This is one that I had in my mind at the beginning of the year when I set a goal for rereads. It's one that was like that I had in my thoughts to get to, and so coming back to it now is interesting considering everything going on in the world, but it didn't really change how I thought about it. The setting is not super significant, and it definitely really skims over any sort of nuanced discussion of the politics, or it mentions like Stalinist socialism. Stalin is in here. He's coming up during kind of Cold War times. This runs, I think, the 50s through the 2000s maybe. And we see a very heavy divide as a result between the socialist, communist, and Warsaw Pact nations and the US. And so the US is very much viewed negatively in this, I think. Interestingly, kind of both sides wind up becoming autocratic. So I think that's really interesting to look at from where we're at now. And eventually, basically Superman being part of this more collectivist society winds up creating kind of a utopia, but because of his upbringing, he's no longer quite as independent. He is, as I said, autocratic, and to the point that when people are doing things horribly wrong or like committing thought crime sort of things, he's taking action to prevent that by almost like lobotomizing people at times. So he has created this very controlled dystopia, but he's also solved all of these social problems. There's no more hunger or crime because he has stopped it all. And so it's a really interesting thought experiment in terms of this topic, and kind of nature versus nurture is a little bit in there, but I don't feel like it's as nuanced as it really could have been. So I liked it. I didn't love it as much as I did the first time around, I think. I'm coming into it with much more critical lens about the way that it talks about socialism and communism and capitalism than I did the first time I read it. So I enjoyed it. I think this one in particular, you really want to read it for the ending. It has a very sort of rushed but very smart ending that makes you view things through a really new lens. So I liked Red Sun. It's a very cool one-shot comic, and definitely one I like having in my collection. Then, random pickup from the library. So I went by and spotted that they had the new Wayward Children novel. This is Where the Drowned Girls Go by Seanan McGuire. I think this is the 7th now in the Wayward Children series. They're novellas. These all follow kids who have gone to portal worlds and come back, like they've been kicked out of their portal world. And so we have originally been at Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children from the beginning, and that's where everything started. And then we've had some books that have gone to actual portal worlds to show the backstories of these characters. So this one is an odd one because we go to a different school for these children. And I don't want to say too much because this is so far in, but it is an okay point to talk about that we have a character, Cora, who went to like a mermaid world, and she is extremely overweight and has always struggled with that and been made fun of, even though she has tried and tried and tried, and her body is just different. And so she felt like she really belonged finally in this portal world that she went to. And now she's back again, and she's been at Eleanor West, but she's really struggling. And so she makes the decision to go to this other school. And we see some other characters from previous books as well interact with her. So we have a couple of prominent characters who we do already know if you've read other books. But in this school, it's almost like a conversion therapy kind of narrative. So I would say major warnings for that, as well as for fat phobia and eating disorder. Those are really prominent in here. But this other school is for children who want to forget if they've chosen to be there, or who the leaders of the school are trying to get to forget their world. Whereas Eleanor West is very much about, accepting and embracing kind of the identity of who they are as connected to these portal worlds. And so it's got really heavy themes there in terms of that identity element and kind of burying your identity. There's a lot of trauma with these kids. So this was a lot darker, I think, than most of the other entries, but I did enjoy it. It wasn't my favorite, but wasn't the worst of the entries that I have read in the series. So yeah, I think as with all of these, people connect with them very differently, but I really liked Cora's characterization, and I really enjoyed the take on this sort of, as I said, conversion therapy type of story. So I think it was done really smartly. So that is all I finished. In progress, you will have seen these from earlier this week, but I'm still reading Appleseed by Matt Bell, still really enjoying it. I'm about a third of the way. And I picked up another random library pickup. I gotta stop picking up random stuff at the library, but I love to do it. I grabbed Dear Memory by Victoria Chang. She's the author of Obit, I think most popularly, a poet. But these are letters, and they're written kind of to her family, to people in her past, and even just inanimate things that she wants to address. So these are all people that maybe aren't around in her life anymore. Either they've passed or they're not people she's in contact with, that she can't actually have a conversation with. And so she's writing these to have that conversation that she wants to ask questions. So I really am enjoying that. I'm taking it kind of one letter at a time, pretty much just dipping in and out, and it's been really lovely. So I had mentioned last week that I was going to be like puzzling and trying to get into a long audiobook, and I'm working on The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss, and it's really fun, really interesting tone that it's like feminist but historical British setting, and it's got all of these daughters of literary, like, mad scientists kind of, so like Mary Jekyll is the lead character. And I'm also working on the ebook of Miss Percy's Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons by Quenby Olson, and that has a very similar tone in like the sense of humor and the writing. It also has a minor feminist look at it in the context that it is within, and it's that historical English. And so that's really interesting that I happen to have come to two very similar works at the same time, and very fun. I'm enjoying both of those, so I'm looking to get stuck into those more this week. So in watching stuff, I had a great week of watching stuff. I watched the entire series of Pieces of Her, which is I think on Netflix, and really interesting thriller series. It stars Toni Collette. I can't remember any of the other people. There are quite a few well-known people who are in it, but it's based on a book. So I'm not sure I really care enough to go back and read the book. I enjoyed the series. It was definitely compelling to watch. Like I blazed through it. But yeah, it kind of, a few things fell apart in the telling, I think, for me. So I am a little curious to see if the book did it better, because a lot of it had to do with execution rather than the actual plot points. So I don't know. But I did really, I thought it was very consumable. The other thing I watched, I actually really loved, was Fresh, and it is not for the faint of heart. It's pretty gross. It is a horror movie starring Sebastian Stan, And I didn't know a lot going in other than that he was in it and that it was probably going to be horror, and it's gruesome for sure, but I think they did very smart choices in how they showed things, because there's not a lot of like direct head-on violence. They really avoided that. I think not until very close to the end do we actually get any on camera really gruesome violent parts. Most of what's gross is really mundane things that are just made to be gross. So yeah, it's all about this woman who is doing online dating and having a really terrible time with it, and then she finally meets this wonderful guy in the grocery store and winds up going on a date with him, and then they have kind of a whirlwind romance, and he offers to take her away for a weekend, and then things kind of go horribly wrong. So it was a very smart social commentary type of horror, I think. So for me, it's not quite as good, but it's in the same bucket as Get Out, where what's horrifying is really what's happening, not the graphic, gross stuff that's happening. It's that this is commenting on the sexism in modern dating and like how awful modern dating is. And I think it engages with that kind of quote that a lot of people say, where like in dating, guys are afraid they're going to get laughed at and girls are afraid they're going to get murdered. Yeah, so I think it really engages with that and definitely the horrors of modern dating, and I really enjoyed it. Thought it was very well done from the cinematography aspect, because you're mostly in one location, in like a single house. You have an amazing cast, like the performances were so good, and the music, they did a stunning job with picking music. Like it gives it this quirky vibe that just makes it darkly humorous for sure. So I really enjoyed it. In terms of life stuff, I think it was a pretty chill week actually, so that was very nice. It has gotten very hot, so we went from like, it literally sleeted on Easter, and now my AC is on because it's roasting. So nothing to talk about there. I did very excitingly use some of my bonus to purchase a cat wheel. So my plans for the afternoon today are to put together the cat wheel. So I may manage to get footage and put it in to upload with this, or it'll be in next week, but you'll get to see some cat wheel footage. So that's like the most exciting thing this week. I think I don't have any recommendations this week because I'm so behind. I have not watched hardly anything, and I do kind of want to comment that I have not been like keeping up with comments as much, and I know Jack from Spreadbook Joy talked about this on one of her videos this week. Like I may seem like I'm very asynchronous if you're getting comments and responses on your videos versus comment replies on my own. I thought it was like not a good thing when I got my tablet last year, and was very annoyed that you don't get notifications in the app. But now I'm like actually happy with that, because it has been very overwhelming. So I've been kind of taking a step back from being as responsive about comments. So if I'm like commenting or I'm having videos going up and not replying to something that you've commented, it's not because I'm ignoring you. I probably just haven't checked because I only have like the mental spoons to put into uploading the video at that time or whatever. So I'm only checking the comments every couple days, as opposed to where I was like trying to check them pretty frequently before, and that's fine. I also did have a very weird occurrence this week where the algorithm just loved me. And so I randomly got on and was uploading a video and realized that one of my videos this week had like exponentially more views than in normal. So they decided to like push a couple of my videos from this week, and it did not translate into new subscribers, I don't think. It did not translate into likes. It did mean that I had a couple dislikes on most of my videos in the past week. So that was fun and annoying. But it was very alarming to get on and see like 300 views on a video that went up yesterday, because normally I get maybe 20 or 30. So yeah, very big multiplication of views, but that doesn't really mean anything if it doesn't interest people. So whatever. So anyway, that is it for me for this week. thank you so much for listening to my rambling, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the weekend. Morning, Ripley. Checking out the grass. Is that good stuff? You guys are so very cool. Such chill cats. So I had a week without any cats except for Coco in the bed. And we've got our temperature indicator here, reading freezing again tonight. Reading this tiny lump. What could it be? Could it be? Whoa! Oh! 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 It's a violent lump. Gumbo is judging us. Rue, did you figure out a method to get your own food? Right there?